Coming up on 2020 on ID, a spirited teenager gone without a trace.
There's no way that she would not have contacted any of her friends.
And a killer with a shady story of sex and murder. But do the clues to Alissa's disappearance point much closer to home?
Mike was watching his own children through a video camera.
Alissa had told him very graphic things, very disturbing things.
Secret home movies, a warehouse packed with evidence, and a cold case that turns hot.
Again, there's only two people that can confirm whether I did it or didn't. One is me, and the other is Alissa.
A family torn apart.
I've never seen my dad do anything bad.
The man that I grew up with, this isn't him.
In search of answers, and Alissa. Welcome to 2020 on ID. I'm John Quinones. More than 1.5 million children run away every year. Most of them return within a week. But what happens to the ones who don't? Mike Turney said he and his stepdaughter Alissa had been arguing the day she went missing. At first, it seemed like a typical fight between a teen and a parent, and that she had run away. Days and weeks of anxious waiting turned into years without a word. And then, finally, what seemed to be an answer. Someone confessed. But was it true, or were there other suspects? Had something suspicious happened behind the doors of the Turney household? As I first reported in 2009, in this case, there were no easy answers. May 27, 2001, the last day of school for students at Paradise Valley High in Phoenix, Arizona. As always, there's anticipation and excitement brewing in the hallways, thoughts of summer fun and freedom. For 17-year-old Alissa Turney, the day started out like many others. Her stepfather, Mike, dropped her off at school and then picked her up for lunch.
Well, she seemed like she was happy about it. She was thinking about the summertime.
What did you talk about at lunch?
Oh, what we're going to do that summer, some of the problems that we were concerned with.
But an argument develops, and the father-daughter luncheon takes a bad turn.
She wanted to be able to stay out later at night and not be accountable to where she was at. And I told her, as long as you're under my roof, we're going to have to check in with Daddy, because Daddy's a nervous wreck if you don't.
So she was upset after lunch?
Oh, definitely upset.
When the two return home, Mike says Alissa storms off to her bedroom. That was the last you saw of her?
Yeah, walking down the hallway mad, like her hair flying behind her.
Mike says he leaves Alissa to go pick up his younger daughter, Sarah, and then run some errands. Along the way, they try to call Alissa at home.
My dad picked me up and said, "Your sister's not answering her cell phone. Will you try to call her?" And so we were just in the car calling. Got home, she wasn't there. You know, my dad was running through the house.
Then we could hear the phone vibrating. And then Sarah found the phone, and then she saw the note was next to it. And then we read the note, my heart just completely stopped. I thought I was going to drop dead.
Alissa writes that she's going to California, so Mike calls the police and files a missing persons report. But there would be no Amber Alert, no detectives hitting the streets in search of the pretty young teen. Alissa was pegged as a runaway, and it's easy to see why. There was that note. She had an argument with her dad, and it was the last day of school.
I think for the first couple weeks, I just thought she was hiding out at a friend's house. She was 17, so she's always like, "I don't want to live here. I shouldn't have to live by these rules." I never thought she would do it.
From even a young age, Alissa had a bit of a rebellious streak.
Sit down and shut up.
She was quite a handful, little pistols, I would call it. She was a very lively person. Careful, don't jump on top of anybody, Alissa. Some people might call it difficult to deal with, but I don't know. I took it as a challenge.
I wanted Notorious B.I.G.
Alissa was just 3 years old when her mother Barbara met and married Mike Turney. He had 3 boys from his first marriage, Rhett, James, and Mike Jr. Barbara had 2 of her own, John and Alissa. Together, Mike and Barbara had a little girl, Sarah. You're like the Brady Bunch.
We were a combined family, mine, hers, and ours.
But did you see her as a daughter?
Always. In our home, we were not allowed to use the term stepchild, second, or whatever.
But in the early 90s, tragedy struck. Barbara was diagnosed with cancer. A year later, she passed away. With the boys now grown, Mike was left a single father of 2 young girls. As Alissa entered her teens, Mike says they experienced the normal parent-child friction. Alissa was more focused on friends and her steady boyfriend than schoolwork. Alissa's best friends, Katie Rothweiler and Charity Thompson, remember Alissa as the typical teen, always ready for a good time.
She was very, very outgoing. She would make fun out of anything and everything that you were doing. And it would just be, you know, a little phrase or a small joke here about nothing. But just the energy that she put off would make it so funny.
Alissa was very carefree and you never knew what was going to happen with her. She was very spontaneous, and it was never a boring moment. Never a boring moment with Alissa.
But Alissa's fun-loving personality and rebellious spirit clashed with her father's tough love brand of parenting.
She would always have to worry about him going through her things all the time. She loved her father, but definitely, I mean, he was very, very strict.
Alissa's friends say her behavior, staying out too late, experimenting with marijuana, skipping class, was nothing out of the ordinary. But her stepfather saw it very differently.
We would have to watch over Alissa to make sure that she didn't put herself in harm's way. And again, she was talking about running away, so monitor phone calls.
Did you go to her place of work too?
Oh, I certainly did. I would go there and check to make sure. Once I had suspected she was not being there when she said she was going to be there, I went and checked.
What would you do when you went there?
Just to look at her, to watch where she's working at, make sure everything's okay.
These weren't typical problems.
No, there was far more problems with Alissa, but I didn't look at
You weren't overreacting. Concerned.
Always concerned.
So concerned, he says, that when Alissa disappeared on that last day of school, he felt she was in immediate danger. So the hours turned into days, no sign of her.
No.
What are you thinking?
Mostly panic.
But then, just a week after Alissa vanished, a mysterious phone call.
It was Alissa. She was agitated, again, like she's picking up the argument where we left off. She was wanted to be left alone.
What did she say?
Well, the conversation was sort of scrambled. It was one way to a certain extent. I said, you know, is this you, Alissa? And said a few cuss words and stuff about leave me alone, and the phone went dead. And again, I immediately started calling the police, telling them, look, frightened for her, and asked them, can you help me get the phone number she called from? They said no.
That brief, angry phone call would be the last time anyone, her friends, her family, would hear from Alissa Turney. Alissa's stepbrother, James.
I'd say as time began to creep on, you know, we got a little more concerned as a family and thinking maybe that during the time that she had run away, something had happened to her before she could get back to us.
Did you begin to think that maybe she wasn't going to come back?
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe she was dead.
Yeah, it was just too long. I mean, she just wasn't the type. If she had run away, she would have most realistically maybe lasted a couple of weeks, maybe a month.
After a few years, did you begin to think she's not around? She's dead.
Yes, I began to fear the worst.
And in this case, father may have known best. When we return, could Mike Turney's worst fears become reality? A serial killer confesses. But detectives have their doubts.
Was he lying? Was he making it up?
Stay with us. Every year, more than 5,000 missing person reports are made in the city of Phoenix alone. One of those in May 2001 was for Alissa Turney, a happy-go-lucky teen with a warm smile and a huge heart.
There are very few people out there that will embrace every person that they meet with their whole heart, and she was exactly that.
Alissa's best friends, Charity and Katie, remember the call they each received from Alissa's stepfather as if it were yesterday.
Mike called me and said, "Do you know where Alissa is? Have you heard from her?" And I said, "No, I haven't." And he said, "Well, she ran away to California," and it just makes you really wish that you would have made that extra effort to see the person, because you don't know when you're going to see them again after that.
While most believed she'd either return or call within a matter of days, only Alissa's stepfather was convinced that something terrible had happened. What's the Phoenix Police Department doing?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Because every time I would ask them for help, it just seemed like they didn't want to help at all. And I kept trying to keep Alissa's case alive.
So you were basically handling the disappearance of your daughter alone.
Oh, yeah.
So Mike says he became his own detective, doing whatever he could think of, posting flyers around town, contacting the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. He even sued the phone company for records of that early morning call a week after Alissa disappeared. That number was traced back to a payphone in Riverside County, California. Did you go there?
Oh, definitely did. I took the pictures and walked from place to place, went to the car dealership. I showed the pictures of Alissa.
Birthdays, holidays, even Alissa's high school graduation passed, and still nothing. Frustrating for the family?
Extremely frustrating. Yeah, I mean, my father seemed to be still very active, saying that he was, investing money and getting flyers out.
It was really haunting my father. It was really, it was very crushing for him.
Haunting for Alissa's friends, too.
There's no way, I know for a fact that she would not have contacted any of her friends.
But then suddenly, what appears to be a vital piece to that puzzle. In 2006, you get a phone call.
I got a phone call from Detective Murphy, who told me that it was a convict who had confessed to murdering Alissa.
His name is Thomas Heimer, a tattooed inmate from Florida with the nickname Psycho. And in 2003, after being convicted of brutally murdering a young woman and sentenced to life in prison, Heimer started talking. To the local authorities and later the FBI, Heimer confessed to killing 21 women. They were mostly adolescent girls who, like Alissa, seemed to have simply vanished. When you hear that this man is taking credit for killing your daughter, what goes through your mind?
It's devastating, because I've still got in the back of my mind, though I'm a realist, that in the back of my mind there's a possibility this kid could show back up, because there's so many things I want to say. Apologies.
But based on Heimer's story, this father's chance to apologize might never come. In explicit and often gruesome detail, this self-proclaimed serial killer explained how he met and then murdered Alissa Turney. To the FBI, Heimer's claims seemed credible enough, so special agents decide to interview the convict in person. And it's during one of those visits that Heimer successfully identifies Alissa from a photo lineup. After several years, simply out of the blue, the Phoenix Police Department now has a case.
A very detailed confession, a disturbing confession.
Stuart Summershoe and Will Anderson, detectives in the Missing Persons Unit, are assigned to Alissa's case.
We got the case in September of 2008, and our main focus was this confession from this convicted murderer.
It was unique in that it removed your typical elements of the crime. He stated he had disposed of this person in such a way that we will never recover human remains. We will never identify a scene. Given those two absences, we had to get to know Alissa. We had to get to know what kind of person she was, to be able to look at Heimer, to address Heimer, and determine whether he had met this person, where he had met this girl. Was he lying? Was he making it up?
The two detectives have their work cut out for them. With little done in 7 years, they were essentially starting from scratch. But from the beginning, something about Alissa's case just doesn't seem right. As the detectives pore over Heimer's letters and speak with investigators in Florida, certain elements of his story seem out of place.
Basically, he said she's a heroin addict. Nobody said that she was a heroin addict. And that's not something you can hide from your friends or your family. He also said that she had some unusual sexual traits, and Again, in talking to her boyfriend, this did not match with Alissa. He claimed to have taken jewelry off her body and given it to ex-girlfriends. They don't remember this happening.
But as detectives try to corroborate Heimer's story, new questions emerge.
We learned that she had a large amount of money in her bank account. When a runaway leaves, they take things with them. They take their money, they take their personal possessions. Alissa didn't take anything with her.
Investigators begin to wonder, did Alissa's trail end at that payphone in California? Or perhaps closer to home?
Talking to the friends, they began to give us details of the things that Alissa had told them, very graphic things, very disturbing things.
She did make comments a few times of being scared of him. She felt like he was going to kill her.
You have a potentially dangerous family secret there and a child who's never been seen again. You put those together, you have to start looking for who would benefit from her disappearance.
When we come back, police turn their attention to the Turney home and discover more disturbing details.
We learned that there was surveillance equipment inside the house. Mike was watching his own children.
Stay with us. The 2001 disappearance of 17-year-old Alissa Turney seems to have reached a cold, dead end. But in 2008, the case gets an unusual jump start from a man named Thomas Heimer. You get a confession out of nowhere.
That's true. This person is in jail for a homicide. He writes a letter to the detective who imprisoned him. He phrases it as, I'm going to make you famous. I'm a serial killer. He then proceeds to confess to a number of homicides. One of them is Alissa Turney.
It's a stunning and painful turn of events for Alissa's family, especially her stepfather, Mike, who felt the police should have done more.
They just dropped it. They didn't follow up on it. They didn't call back.
But the Phoenix Police Department say they did everything they could do. And now, with a confession in hand, the case becomes a top priority. What does he say about her?
He claims he met her in Phoenix around May of 2001. They're in a hotel. They basically, during a sexual encounter, he claims that he strangles her to death. He then takes her body and puts it in a bathtub, claims he cuts it up into 6 pieces and disposes of it at a recycling center.
But was it a killer finally coming clean, or a cunning convict looking for attention? Detectives discover little, if any, information from Heimer can be corroborated. They decide it's time for a trip to that prison down in Florida.
I went down and I spoke to him. We took one of our polygraphers, one of our most experienced polygraphers.
Did you kill Alissa? Yes. Are you the person who killed Alissa?
We polygraphed him and he failed the polygraph. I sat down with him and I said, you know, I know this girl. You're gonna have to convince me that you know this girl because there's things that you'll be able to tell me. And he kind of got this look on his face like, oh, this isn't gonna work.
I know this girl pretty well, and I know that you weren't with this girl.
If you say it's not her, I mean, hey, I take it work for you. You've been around her more than I have.
That's when he started to change his story a little bit. He's like, well, I did pick up a girl in Phoenix, and I did kill her, but maybe it wasn't Alissa.
If I had to choose that picture, I wouldn't have picked her out. No, I wouldn't have picked her out. I wouldn't have said it was her.
Okay, so where would you put your percentage now if you had to say it?
You haven't looked at that other picture. That picture?
Not her.
That's not her. That's not the person. Okay. That picture there, I can't give 100% because that looks like somebody totally different.
I don't find his confession credible. I don't think there's any validity to it.
He's a very troubled man. We just don't believe he killed Alissa.
Detectives believe Heimer saw Alissa's photo in a newspaper before he ever confessed. But the renewed investigation brings fresh eyes.
This is the first time we've opened up this box since it was
as the two detectives sift through the case file.
And what did you find out about Alissa? Who was this girl?
She's 17 years old. She was going to high school. She worked at Jack in the Box. She had lots of friends. Seemed to get along with everybody. Didn't have any enemies. Alissa's a typical American teenager.
What isn't typical is how she disappeared, never calling or tipping off friends, leaving behind her cell phone, her hairbrush and makeup, and never touching a penny of the $1,800 she had at a bank, just a few blocks from where she lived. And as detectives look closer, Alissa's stepfather, Mike, comes into focus.
There's some disturbing things that were going on in that household, and Alissa seemed to be part of it. We learned that there was surveillance equipment inside the house. Not just, security outside. There was a camera on the outside. There's also a camera on the inside in a vent in the living room. So basically, Mike was watching his own children through a video camera.
Investigators believe Mike's strange video collection could be the key to solving the case. When asked about those cameras, though, Mike says he put them up for safety reasons and not to spy on his kids. But then he sends the detectives clips of Alissa with boys from months before she disappeared. So where was the video from the day Alissa went missing? Well, Mike says he reviewed that tape back in 2001, all 8 hours of it, and saw nothing. But he never produces that tape for investigators.
Even if you think it shows nothing criminal, it shows me what she's wearing. It shows me how her hair was styled. It shows her packing. It shows her jewelry. It shows her walking out of the home, which would direct my attention somewhere other than that home. His opinion of nothing is different than my opinion of nothing. I want that tape.
And there's more.
We also become aware, speaking to the family, speaking to friends, other associates, that there's a passive recording system on the home telephone number. All calls going in, all calls going out are automatically recorded. So that's another interesting thing. If Alissa called that home early in the morning, unsolicited, I would expect there to be a recording of it.
Alissa! Most troubling are stories about Alyssa's relationship with her stepfather, Mike.
She told me one time that he tried sexually abusing her when she was younger.
What did she say happened?
Dad picked her up early from school one day, driving around. I think the story was pulled over somewhere in, an unoccupied area, something like a desert area, and tried fooling around with her, and she got aggressive.
Now, the family was being cooperative. They were giving you things you wanted. They were giving extensive interviews to you.
Everyone but Mike. Everybody else was coming in for an interview and, very cooperative and forthcoming. Mike was the only one that wouldn't come in for an interview. Again, that's suspicious to me.
And detectives aren't the only suspicious ones.
None of it made sense.
Alyssa's maternal aunts, Teresa Ortberg and Lynette Ante, say there are inconsistencies in Mike's story.
He had told me a while back, before she ran away, that he had put cameras outside of his house. And I questioned him about that, and he said I didn't have them on. I didn't know about him picking her up from school. Why wouldn't he tell me that? I mean, that's a big part of her being gone.
Now remember, Alyssa's stepfather pressed the cops for attention early on, so why hasn't he come in for questioning? And where are those video surveillance tapes from the day Alissa went missing?
These cameras also had sound, so at the very least there would be sounds of doors opening, some kind of activity going on inside the house.
And there are other questions. What about the contentious relationship with his stepdaughter? What about those allegations of sexual abuse?
He's never spoken to police?
He has spoken to us. He communicates through email and some faxes and things like that. But it's couched very much in him trying to direct the investigation, trying to put out his version of events.
At some point, they want you to come talk to investigators.
Yes.
And you said?
I said, that's fine. When you're ready, I'm ready.
But why didn't you go down there to talk to them?
If they would have called me, when they were ready to call me, we would have gone. And they knew that very well, that I would have gone.
They say you refused.
They lied.
To his credit, Mike Turney did provide them with records of that phone call he received after Alissa disappeared. But in a number of calls and letters, police say Mike exhibits signs of paranoia and hostility, and he accuses law enforcement of corruption and conspiracy.
And now, police say, it gets even more bizarre. Out of the blue, Mike claims a local union is responsible for Alyssa's disappearance. Why? He says he worked as an electrician in the 80s, and he tells police that the union had a grudge against him because he complained about work conditions. Investigators start to wonder now if there's more to what they call Mike's Jekyll and Hyde personality.
Mike's a dichotomy. He portrays himself as a good family man. He buys a lot of Christmas presents for his kids, takes them to Disneyland, helps his neighbors. But then you have this other side who is into conspiracy theories, who's anti-government, kind of a narcissist. He's a manipulator.
To better understand who they're dealing with, detectives consult forensic psychiatrist Dr. Stephen Pitt.
One of the things that really stood out in the dynamic between Michael Turney and his stepdaughter was his need for absolute control and dominance.
Time to get up, Lissy. Get up, Lissy. Get up.
It was clear that Michael Turney was not someone that played well with others.
Stop!
This is a man who more likely than not had some type of emotional problem.
Want some candy, little girls?
Those were the kind of big red flags.
In early December 2008, the team heads to the Turney home, armed with a search warrant, hoping they'll find the video and audio surveillance they desperately need.
We knew he had a lot of guns and some hostility and paranoia towards the police. With all that in mind, we used our SWAT team.
The team waits outside.
Mike was not going to be arrested that day. He was going to be detained in order to get handwriting samples, DNA, that sort of thing.
Finally, they get their chance.
Mike walked out to his mailbox, and at that point our SWAT team stopped him and took him into custody. Mike had 2 pistols on his person, 7 magazines filled with ammo. He had a knife. We then made entry into the house. The house is in disarray, and there's pretty much guns in every room.
19 guns in all, high-caliber assault-style weapons. There were silencers, too. But that's just the tip of the iceberg.
One of the detectives is in his room, pulls up a bag, and inside he observes pipe bombs.
Pipe bombs?
Explosive devices filled with gunpowder and roofing nails.
The Phoenix Police Department's bomb squad uncovers the largest stash of improvised explosive devices inside the home of
I just turned on the news, and sure enough, it was Mike Turney. Your heart just sinks. Like, really? You know, there's part of you that's like, finally, you know, they're gonna dig into this deeper, you know, we're gonna find something out. And then the other part of you is like, I don't know if I can handle this, you know?
There was no doubt in my mind that there would be many firearms in that home. I did not expect the home to look like Camp Pendleton.
Coming up, manifestos and madness.
There is absolutely no doubt that a mass murder was prevented.
And big questions for Mike Turney.
What were you planning to do?
Stay with us.
This is a huge amount of evidence and information we need to go through. I mean, this bag here is probably about 100 hours of work right here.
They sit in a police warehouse in Phoenix, Arizona. Box upon box, bag after bag of evidence from Mike Turney's home. In December 2008, detectives went looking for clues to Mike's stepdaughter's disappearance. Instead, police say they find explosives, 26 pipe bombs to be exact, along with 2 silencers. Mike was arrested and turned over to the feds. But in Alissa's case, he remains an investigative lead, which means detectives must sift through these piles of tapes, a sort of homemade wiretap, going back nearly 20 years.
There's no real rhyme or reason to them. And as stated, they're not organized in any fashion. They're not dated. There's no method to the madness. So every one of them has to be gone through.
But could one of these recordings shed light on a teenage girl's last day at home?
It's a needle in a haystack, basically. We just have to go through each thing, and it's daunting, is what it is.
Daunting, but not without hope. Already, detectives have uncovered strange new details about Alissa's life at home, revealed in these documents and evidence, like these contracts Alissa had to sign saying she was never molested, and allegations from Alissa's friends.
She described waking up to him gagging and suffocating.
She had been sleeping and she woke up tied to a chair and gagged.
And this, from Mike Turney's son.
They were driving, and as they were driving, he scooted over towards her, and tried to touch her. And she got she pulled off the road, and she said she got out and ran off. I gotta be honest with you. I believe, I just found out 2 months ago that he actually took her out of school that day. I would love her. I do. I believe in my heart he did. I don't know, but I believe in my heart. Why would he take her to school?
They are stories that are downright frightening, according to investigators, especially when you consider these videos, bondage videos, found in Mike Turney's bedroom. Even more disturbing, police say, a commercially made snuff film in which a woman is abducted, bound, and killed.
It's been viewed by 1 million people. What I didn't like about it is we also have a DVD where that specific scene was edited back to back to back, looped basically 4 times.
A coincidence or a connection? It may be too early to tell, but forensic psychiatrist Dr. Stephen Pitt isn't surprised by any of this.
I've seen many a person who were tight like this, blood, bring great harm to someone whom they professed great love for. So whether or not it's a biological loved one or someone that is a stepdaughter, at the end of the day, anger, revenge, hostility, control, dominance rules the day.
And all of those themes are present here in this 98-page document written by Mike Turney and found in his home. It's a sort of manifesto outlining a violent plan. Remember that union that Mike had a grievance with? Well, he claims they wanted revenge and that it was the union who took Alissa and killed her to punish him. He writes that the union then dumped her body out here in Desert Center, California, about 200 miles west of Phoenix. And he says he was going to attack that union hall to avenge Alissa's death. But is this just a cover story for a man with a guilty conscience?
As far as the larger, the vast conspiracy involving the union, we've talked to union members, we've talked to their people on staff. Nobody has any idea who Mike is.
Pretty outlandish.
If you're to believe everything Mike said, it doesn't make any sense. This is a girl who ran away, left a note, and then made it to California. A week later, she calls her father. So we're to believe somehow the union was tracking her the whole time, and then after she made that phone call, they decided to strike and then do something to her. Yeah, it's outlandish. I mean, he's very good at telling a story, giving details that seem plausible, but it's not true.
If this happened in 2003, why aren't we aware of it? Why do I have to get into your safe and find this manifesto?
The authorities believe Mike's attack against that union hall was imminent.
I think we were probably weeks, if not days, away from a very bad attack against this union hall.
We served that search warrant on December 11th. The next meeting for that union hall was the 15th.
He refused to interview with police, refused to take a lie detector test. But Mike Turney agreed to talk to us. He sat down to answer some of the tough questions he's facing.
I'm John Quinones.
We went to visit him at a federal prison near Phoenix, where he's being held for those weapons and explosives charges. He's not charged with anything related to Alissa's disappearance.
So they raid your house with a search warrant, and they find some pretty disturbing things.
Isn't that amazing?
So what were you planning to do?
I wanted the attention brought to Alissa because in my mind, I believe anything adverse happened to Alissa, it was done by a union.
Police say you were going to bomb the local union hall.
What bombs? Because these things weren't in there. They were not in that house.
Well, tell me then, what did you have in your house?
Firecrackers, a few things to make some noise, start a fire. So when I blew my head off, at least it would make some kind of noise.
Mike says the bombs were not his, that they were planted in his home by police. But he does take credit for that manifesto.
In one of your writings, you actually said, and I quote here, that you had to kill at least 12 union members.
I don't remember.
Were you going to take innocent lives?
Nope.
They find hours and hours, countless hours of audio tapes and videotapes. Why did you record so much?
Why do I record so much? The videos are recorded because I love my family.
But weren't these surveillance cameras in the house?
Those are for my protection of my house. Does that seem unusual?
For security?
Yeah, most of it's for security. Why? Because I want to spy on everybody?
But why didn't you hang on to those things that could have proven that you're not to blame? The surveillance video from the day Alissa disappeared. The audio recording of that phone call you say she made.
There was nothing on the tape. They were told that.
They also had those other tapes of bondage and your sexual activities.
Consensual sex with a woman.
But the sexual stuff was rather kinky.
So? I mean, what does that mean? I'm guilty of killing my daughter because I had kinky sex with some woman? That's what that means?
Some of Alyssa's friends say that she came to them in tears, that she said that one day she woke up and you were on top of her, gagging her. Another time she woke up, she was handcuffed to the bed. Are those things true?
Absolutely not.
Never gagged her?
Never gagged her.
Never was on top of her?
Never once.
Never handcuffed her?
Never. Absolutely not.
Did you ever do anything sexual with your stepdaughter?
No. Why would I do that? They have no proof whatsoever, anything other than rumors, innuendos, and lies.
If they have no proof, that doesn't mean you didn't do it.
Well, again, there's only two people that can confirm whether I did or didn't. One is me, and the other is Alissa. Alissa's not here, and I'm sitting here. And all I can say, till hell freezes over, I didn't do a damn thing to my daughter.
Did you kill her?
No. Absolutely not.
If detectives want to come interview here in prison, they can do that. You'll agree to that?
They sure can. I have never once denied to talk to these police officers.
Since our visit with Mike Turney, detectives spoke with him by phone and requested a police interview. They say he declined. But they continue to believe that this case can be solved.
The fact is, much of what you have is circumstantial.
The circumstantial case is strong and it's growing, but like you said, there's no one bright spotlight on Michael Turney.
No smoking gun.
No smoking gun, but I have a tremendous number of stars, little bits of information that are illuminating the landscape.
One of those stars may be pointing right here. Do these bones hold answers to Alyssa's case? Stay with us. Since Alissa Turney's disappearance in 2001, many, including her little sister, Sarah, still have hope for a happy ending. Sarah has created websites dedicated to finding Alissa.
Until I'm shown evidence otherwise, she's on the beach sipping margaritas, living a brand new life. You know, that's the way I want to think of her. I won't let myself think negatively without evidence.
And now Sarah has started websites devoted to another cause, her father. Along with Mike Turney's arrest, the bombs, the violent manifesto, comes speculation. Is this a man who did something unthinkable? Or is he just a devoted dad, driven to the edge over the search for his stepdaughter?
The public makes him look, you know, horrible on the news. You know, it's not him. Everyone who knows my dad is shocked.
Sarah and her brother Mike refuse to believe any connection between their father and Alyssa's disappearance. They say they never saw any explosives around the home.
I've never seen my dad do anything bad. I mean, I've never seen my dad drink. I've never seen him smoke. I've never seen him be violent. He's been nothing but a positive image for me.
But another sibling isn't as sure.
Do you think your father was capable of killing her?
I don't know. I really don't know. The man that I grew up with, this isn't him. I don't know who this person is now.
If you could talk to your dad, what would you ask him?
I would say if there's any part of you that's still like the dad that I grew up with, the Superman, just help us put this to bed, because it is going to destroy the family. And I think this could bring some healing to it.
And there are those who are convinced that on that last day of school, something happened between stepfather and stepdaughter.
I definitely believe that there was foul play in her disappearance, and I can't say exactly what that foul play was, but I definitely think that there was.
I think Mike did something. I don't know what. I don't know how. I don't know if it was planned or if it was something that just happened. I don't know. But I think he did something. I think he did.
Meanwhile,
we're at the base of a mountain of evidence, and it's going to take us a while to get anywhere near the top of that mountain.
We have VHS tapes,
audio tapes,
surveillance photos, computers, paper documents, DVDs, CD-ROMs.
We have a duty to go through it all, because that one thing that we ignore or we don't pay attention to might be vital to the case.
Do you think we'll ever find out what happened to Alissa?
I have to go forward with the idea that yes, we will. I mean, otherwise this is an exercise in futility. I think we're closer to finding what happened to her than we've ever been. And, you know, there's just a few more steps that we need to take that'll get us to that point.
One of those steps has led the investigation here to Desert Center, California, the place where Mike says the union dumped Alissa's body. The detectives believe there's a reason Mike named the area in his manifesto, and they may be onto something.
I checked to see if there's any unidentified bodies found there. 2003, a hiker came across some bones. Not a full body, and not even enough to identify what sex the body is. We've now asked them to analyze it and compare it to the DNA we have on record for Alissa.
We're hoping that the kernel of truth he inserted was Desert Center, and that for some reason Alissa will be found there. But even saying that, the only person who knows where Alissa is the person who put Alissa there. That's the vertebrae?
Yeah, I think so.
And if it is Alissa, there will be even more questions for Mike Turney. Until then, Alissa's case remains open.
Why do you do it?
For Alissa. A 17-year-old girl, no reason for her to disappear like that. It needs to be explained.
You talk to her family, you talk to her friends, and you see that she's left a hole in their lives.
I really just want to find my big sister.
We want to find her again, find the answers.
We all just want closure.
We love her and we miss her.
You can't help but want to try to get some resolution for them. And we just keep moving forward and keep working to try to find out what happened to her. And once we find that out, where she's at, then get justice for her.
DNA tests on the bone fragments were inconclusive, and as of 2014, Alissa Turney has not been found. Mike Turney pled guilty to the weapons charges and was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Although he remains the only person of interest in Alissa's disappearance, he has not been charged. He's due to be released in 2017. Alissa's sister Sarah told us she no longer believes her father is completely innocent. I'm John Quinones. Please join us next time for another edition of 2020 on ID.